Welcome to Face the State. I'm Ariana Bennett. Thank you for joining us. Well, there are some big seats up for grabs in state and local office this election, from governor to Washoe County Sheriff, and voters will narrow down their choices in the upcoming primary. But things are a little different this year, starting with a new Registrar of Voters for Washoe County. And speaking of, Deanna Spicula, the new Registrar of Voters, is here now to tell us all about what's going on right now. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
All right, thank you for having me.
Okay, so you took over for Lou Ann Cutler. We've had her on Face the State a few times. She retired at the end of 2017, and wow, what a busy time for you to take over the office.
It is. It's a good time, though. We were transitioning from our old equipment to our new equipment. Lou Ann, of course, it was a goal of hers to make sure that we had this in place before she left. She wanted to make sure that we were set up for success after her departure, so very thankful to her for that.
Yeah, okay, so for those who are not familiar with what the Registrar of Voters does, just tell us what the office is.
Well, the two main things that we do are voter registration, and we administer elections for Washoe County. We also do petition verification, and we also do precinct and district information for all our voters.
And it's a really big undertaking, dealing with all the different races, all the different elections that happen from, primary to general. Obviously, it's kind of a year-round task, and now is your busy season.
It is, yes. We've hit our busy season, and we do a lot of detail-oriented work. We do a lot of proofing, and it does take a lot of work, and it takes a lot of people.
Now, is the primary election kind of like a test run for the general, or is it considered game day just like the general?
It's game day just like the general. We do everything that we do for a general election. We have to do all the same preparations. We just do it sometimes on a little bit smaller scale, but for the most part, we're doing everything that we do for a general election. And we consider it just as important as a general election. There's a lot of things that are going on, a lot of important things that happen in a primary. So it's very important that everything be right and that everyone show up and vote.
Absolutely. Okay, and speaking of, I took a look at the numbers of registered voters in Washoe County just ahead of this primary. Total, we've got 257,700-ish. How's that looking compared to past numbers?
So in 2014, we had about 217,000 registered voters, and in 2016, we had 241,000 registered voters going into the primary. So we're definitely well above that.
That's great news. Any reason why that is?
I think a lot of it has to do with our population is growing. A lot of people are moving into Reno and Sparks, and so we're just getting that bump from a lot of new voters entering into the voter registration database. Also, more youth are getting involved. UNR is very active, so we do have a little more interest in our youth. We just got to get them out to vote. We get them registered, we got to get them out to vote. So we're continuing to work with them up at UNR and getting that youth vote.
Right, and in primaries, traditionally, we do see really low turnout compared to generals. I think last year last election, we didn't even hit 20%, right?
Yeah.
It was 19%.
I'm thinking our numbers so far for early voting seem to be the same trend as we've had the last two primaries. Although I do think we might get a little bump, it seems to be increasing already in voter turnout. So I'm hopeful that as we get closer to the end of early voting, that more and more people will start to turn out.
Now, Nevada has a really high number of nonpartisan voters. Here in Washoe County, 52,000, almost 300 nonpartisan voters, which is actually pretty high, I imagine, compared to other places. And I know that a lot of nonpartisan voters feel kind of disenfranchised during the primaries because we're party closed. In the primaries. So what message do you have for nonpartisan voters who are kind of feeling like, not worth it?
It's still really important. There's still many races that are nonpartisan that you'll see in this primary election. Our Washoe County Sheriff's on the ballot. We have our school boards. There's some of the judicial offices. So there's still some very important offices, even though they're just nonpartisan offices. They are very important that people still get out and cast their vote for who they want to move forward.
Absolutely. City councils are nonpartisan too.
Yes, and the city councils, yes.
Something that we've seen in the past too with primaries is that when we have such low voter turnout, especially in the smaller races, you can have races decided by just a few dozen votes. So,
yes.
So people say, oh, my vote doesn't matter. Your vote really matters in the primary.
Yeah, especially in the local level.
Right.
It's very, there are some races in the last few elections that we've had that have been won by very few votes.
And some races can be decided in the primary, right?
A few of them, it depends on what type of office they are, but there are some that if they receive 50+1% of the vote, then they are nominated or they are elected. They don't have to go on. So there are some that can be elected in the primary.
Right. So if you're not participating in the primary, you could be missing out on your one chance, really. So,
yes.
Yeah, we got to belabor the point.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's important.
Now, this is interesting, especially where voter registrations are concerned. There's a question on the ballot coming up in November to automatically register voters in Nevada through the DMV, and voters are going to get to decide whether they think this should happen. What do you think about that proposal? Do you think it's a good idea?
The DMV is already a mandated registration. They offer a mandated registration for anyone who does business basically with DMV. So instead of them opting in, they're opting out, or vice versa. I mean, to us, it's kind of the same. I'm not sure what effect it's going to have if more people will end up participating because of basically the change in how they would process those people. Of course, anytime that we can get more people involved in the electoral process, we very much encourage it. So it'll be interesting to see. We will do, of course, whatever we need to. And like I said, the more people that we can get registered and participating, the stronger we are and the better it is for everyone.
Do you find that some people aren't voting not because they don't want to, but because they don't get their registration in time, or is that not a common thing?
That's more common towards the general election. I think we hear that people didn't know it was coming up, or sometimes circumstances happen and they couldn't get it done before the close of registration. But for the most part, I think participation. It's hard to say why people don't show up to vote. It could be just they don't have an interest in the races that are on the ballot for a primary, or it's really hard to say. But of course, like I said, we always encourage people to come out for the primaries because it is very important as well.
Yeah, well then in that case then, if it is a lack of preparation, getting that registration in time, then the automatic registration would help those people at least. Obviously it's up to a vote, so we'll see what happens, but it should be interesting. Speaking of Election Day, obviously, in Nevada, is there any change in the things you need to bring when you come vote?
No, it's the same as it's always been. We do encourage people to bring their sample ballot. I brought mine. It does have your polling place information, and also it has a ballot facsimile inside, and it'll give you a way to mark your ballot before you go to the polls, and it speeds up the process. The poll worker can scan your barcode and get you checked in faster, and then when you're at the machine voting, you'll have your choices already pre-selected, and then it speeds up the process for everybody. So I want to see that.
Yeah, no, it definitely helps out, especially because it's hard to remember in some of the races where you have to do research and the names aren't as easy to recognize. Okay, and then still in Nevada, you don't need to bring an ID.
No, we do signature verification. There are a few circumstances where somebody might be asked for ID if they're a first-time voter in the state and haven't presented ID before, or if for some reason their signature mismatches or there's some other inconsistency in their record, they may ask for ID to confirm the voter's identity when they're there.
Okay, now this comes up every election, really, people concerned about voter fraud and needing voter ID laws basically to cut down on that. Do you see any reason in your experience that a voter ID should be put into place?
I'm not sure that a voter ID would cut down on those concerns. We do the signature verification. It is pretty good at catching any anomalies or anything that's off. I'm not sure if it would help cut down on what people think is voter fraud. We don't see any evidence of that up in the north up here. So it'd be interesting to see how it pans out in other states. But for us in Washoe, we're pretty confident in the process we already have in place.
So in Washoe County, it's not typical to see people trying to double vote?
No, not at all.
Okay, has it happened?
We've had, a rare occasion where somebody had forgotten. We had a lady, she had forgotten, she thought it was for a different, she had submitted her absentee ballot and she went to vote at a polls and she really was just confused. She thought it was a different election. So we have, things like that happen occasionally, but really a concerted effort for people to commit fraud, we don't see it up here.
Okay, but it is definitely a concern among a lot of people. So what message do you have for people who, who raise these issues to you?
Yeah, well, of course, always call our office. You can call us. You can call the Secretary of State's office. We work with them on a lot of different voter registration issues. We have a lot of vetting processes. We do bump our databases up against the DMV and also with the statewide voter registration list. We also check social security numbers and that kind of thing. So we do review and vet our information that we receive. And of course, if there's anything that flags, we'll go ahead and flag that voter and we'll get more information from them, or in rare cases, they'll have to show ID at the polls.
And then you were telling me before we started this interview that you do have room for observers. Do people come and see or to volunteer to be poll workers?
Yeah,
right?
we are very open. We are completely transparent. We are open to the public for all our processes. One way to see how things work behind the scenes is sometimes just become an observer at the polls. You can observe at the polling place. You can observe at our office during election night tally. You can also observe us processing our absentee ballots. There's a lot of different ways that people can come and see what we do. And like I said, we welcome them. We're open to anybody who wants to come and see what we do.
You probably learn a lot too. I imagine there's a lot that people don't know, you know, about the process.
I'm sure there's a lot of people, they're amazed at all the things that we do and how we go through our processes. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm usually stationed at the registrar's office on election night, and my first time there, I was totally blown away at the system and how it all works. Is really, really interesting to see. So I definitely recommend it. Okay, so a question I got from a few viewers a few months ago was there were rumors floating around that the registrar's office had recently purged a bunch of voters from the rolls. I understand that was kind of a misconception. Can you kind of explain what happened there?
Yeah, we don't actually purge records. We do cancel people occasionally. There's a defined process based on federal and state law that we have to follow in order to reach out to voters to either get an updated address or some other, we do some projects with the National Change of Address program through the USPS. We also work with a cross-state program. So if we're notified by one of those programs that somebody has potentially moved either within the state or outside of the state, we're required to mail them a notice in the mail. Now, so what happens from there is if they get the mail and they respond to us, then we, of course, are fine. We resolve the record. If we get it back undeliverable from the post office, we will actually send a second notice out. When we receive that one back and undeliverable again, then we will inactivate them. Now they will need to stay inactive on our rolls for 2 federal elections before any action is ever taken. If they do re-register, update their information, show up to vote, then again, we'll resolve their record and they'll be fine. The only time that they will get canceled is if they've been inactive for those 2 federal elections. Again, they still remain on our voter registration database rolls. So if they do return to town or if they re-register or anything like that, we can, of course, basically reactivate, bring them back into the mix, but we never fully purge any roles. So, and those programs all have to be complete 90 days before the election. So you won't see us doing any of those activities during election time.
Okay, and so about how many people does that affect regularly?
We will do a few programs, usually like a regular NCOA program where we're doing mailers. There's about 17,000 registered voters that we'll mail notices to. Of those, we probably get, I'd say about a 20% response rate that people either update their information or they confirm that their residence address has not changed. And that we do those usually once or twice a year. So, we're looking at maybe 30,000 records that we'll look through during a year.
Okay, so obviously too late for the primary because I think that's all set. But for the general, if people are concerned about their registration status, they can check that very easily.
Yes, on our website we have a voter lookup. You just enter your last name and date of birth, and you can see your registration status, your party, your residence address. All that information about you as a voter is on our website.
Okay, well, we are just about ready to go to break. But before we go, is there anything in particular that you would like the public to know heading into this primary at all?
Well, of course, as we've said so many times, it's very important that you get out and vote for this primary. Look out for your sample ballot. If you haven't received your sample ballot, please give our office a call. You can also request an absentee ballot. That's also another way you can vote. You have up to 7 days before the election to request an absentee ballot for any election. So if you just want to vote from home, you don't have to have a reason. You can request that absentee ballot.
Okay, makes it quick and easy.
Yes,
all right, Deanna, thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Okay, sit tight. Coming up on Face the State, you'll find new voting machines at the polls this year. Deanna's going to come back, give us a little demonstration of how they work, and we'll find out how they keep those ballots secure. That's right after the break.